Okay, I'll try to keep this intro short, and you can skip to here if you already know what this is. Okay, this is something I've been waiting a really long time for. It's going to be very different from my usual stuff, but I have heard, nothing but praise about this. This is something Wake, who is now a close friend of mine, has been working on for, I think over 2 years. I don't know. I'm sure when I read the introduction page, it'll tell me, but I met Wake over a year ago, and he told me about this special project he was working on. And when I found out what it was, I was skeptical, kinda. But he read me like the first few paragraphs, I think. I don't remember, it's been so long. I just remember being really impressed. So I decided that on release, I would do a reading series on it. Now, apparently J Flare and possibly other YouTubers are going to be sponsoring this series. So if you're here, hi! Wake doesn't want me to specify what this is about, like who this is for. He wants to make sure anyone who knows nothing about the source material goes in blind. Apparently, this is best experienced without context, like what it's about, basically not knowing what game this is from. So, in summary, this is a reading series. Well, I will read you what this is. Apparently, some people are calling this the new canon, like some awe inspiring masterpiece. Some of you might understand what I mean by that, but I decided to do this because I wanted to offer people who prefer audiobooks a different option. Keep in mind, this will be more out of reaction more than an actual audiobook, but this is your best option for lazy readers. I'm a little nervous because I have heard this has made many people cry, and I would really prefer not to cry on video. I'll try not to, but yeah, this whole thing has its own music, its own dedicated Discord server, so if you're interested in all this, I'll have everything linked in the description, and you can check it all out. Alright, let's begin! Oh wait, one more thing. Wake said this is an early copy, and if there's somehow still an error, it'll likely be fixed, and there might be incredibly minor changes made. So let's get right into chapter 1. Okay, you just saw the cover art for this piece, and Arc 1, chapter 1 through 8. The author is Wake Burns, and it doesn't display here, but I know that Vocox did the introductory art piece, so big props to him. For Victoria's viewers, Google Docs can be weird and mark words as incorrect when they're not. I apologize, that is annoying, but this is an early copy and I don't have any other method to give this to her. If you wish to read this yourself, you can check out the link she provides below. Okay. Introductory. This is a fan-made passion project that has been in the works for over 2.5 years. The end goal of this project is to have it converted into a manga or comic for the community it was intended for, and those who are looking for an engaging story. This was made because I wish to give back to the community that gave me so much, and for the devs that worked so hard to create it. There is no need to understand or know any of the source material in order to enjoy the story. If you wish to find out what this fan-made lore is for, you will find out at the end of the questions page. This story is best experienced when going in blind. I can assure you that it has recently received plenty of praise, and I can guarantee that reading this will not be a waste of your time. It is roughly a 2 to 4 hour read from start to finish. Thank you to everyone who has given me the support for this project over the years, and I look forward to finishing the future arcs that will be released soon. If you wish to financially fund this project, which will make it go a lot faster, you can support this project on Patreon. Link. If you wish to listen to any of the original music made for this project, or all the official artwork by Vocox and Winford, join the Discord. Link. It's by far the best place to keep up with the updates and release schedules. I am thrilled for this release, and I greatly look forward to the future of this project and the people that may enjoy it. Warning to all readers. This is a character-driven story with heavy topics and deep emotional loss. This story is not for the faint-hearted. Readers' discretion is advised. Note, this is a script for a comic/manga. Words Between quotations are text that will be in speech bubbles for said comic. All text between the barracks are English translations of French text. Chapter 1 is entirely third person. Afterwards, each chapter will be presented in first person. There are segments where the first person perspective will switch to a different character. This will be indicated by the name of the character displayed as a title. Enjoy. Okay, Chapter 1, Maeve. Okay, Chapter 1, Maeve. It's midnight. Screams cover a village of an olden era as a shattered moon lights the night sky. Inside one of the wooden houses, a little girl with long brown hair grips the knees of her mother. Explosions and gunfire can be heard just outside their village. Their mother yells toward the suited soldier who stands in their open front door with rifle at hand. They speak for only a second, nodding at each other in a brief moment of reassurance. As the man leaves the house, the mother turns to her daughter. She looks down at the young blue-eyed girl still gripping onto her leg. Without further hesitation, she huddles her over, escorting the young girl into a bedroom. The girl's mother frantically leads her to the bed in the far right corner. As they stop just before the lip of the bed, the mother gets on her knees and undoes her necklace, placing it around the child. The mother reassures the child in the words of a French language. I know you have no use for it now, but I'm sure you'll need it soon. Keep it on you at all times, at least until you can manage mana on your own. The girl looks upon the familiar necklace in confusion. What do you mean? I do not have time to explain it right now. Pushing her along, she hides the child beneath the bed, saying only words of reinforcement to ensure her daughter that everything will be fine. You are my little Tigran. The blood of your father runs within you, as does mine. I thought I was half Tigran. The mother chuckles with a smile. She looks upon the girl with the eyes of a loving mother. Okay, smarty pants. Half Tigran. You may not have a tail or the eyes of a cat like your father does, but you certainly have the bravery and courage that he and I have always had. You are just as strong of a warrior as I am, if not stronger. But I'm scared. We're all scared. It's okay to be scared, but you're going to be all right. Maeve, I'll protect you. I promise. Suddenly, everything erupts into a violent torrent of splinters and nails. The walls around Maeve melt away, turning into that of a blistering fire. Cascades of dust rain down as remnants of the building collapse around her. She covers her ears in pain as the ringing of bells clatter her senses. She screams out for her mother, but to no avail. She hears nothing. It was as if her own voice had been robbed from her, taken away and locked behind the pain that now consumes her. She has been left all but deaf. The dust and sulfur in the air fill her lungs. She covers her mouth, but it makes no difference. She rages in a coughing fit, unable to breathe or speak. As the dust settles, she opens her eyes, only to see near pitch-black darkness. The bed creaks as the weight of the rubble bears down on the metal frame above her. She lays there, motionless, unable to move from the fear that has overtaken her. She calls out once more to her mother, pleading for her at the top of her lungs. She waits, but her patience is unanswered. Hours pass. The sound of explosions have ceased. Maeve gains the courage to move. Looking down at the end of the bed, she sees a faint light leaking through the stone and wooden rubble. Slowly, she crawls her way forward, approaching the gap at a steady pace. Setting her hand on the splintered wood where the light resides, she claws her way through. The dirt, the wood, and the stone tear at her fragile skin as she progresses. Without warning, the rubble gives way. She stumbles forward, tumbling into the ashes of what once was her home. The village has been battered by mortar fire. The burning fires of the nearby houses still light the night sky. She raises to her knees, stumbling back to the rubble of the bedroom she was once in, grabbing and pulling any rubble she has the strength to lift. She calls for her mother once again. Picking up one stone after the other, the skin of her hands peel away as she attempts to save the only family she has. Then suddenly she stops. She stops to gaze upon the one thing she wished to never see. Sticking out from the debris is the stiff hand of her mother, bruised and battered, laying motionless under the firelight. She does not cry. She no longer can. She only gazes upon her dead mother's wedding ring, the symbol of a family, broken. It's dawn. The sun begins to lift what could only be described as a war zone. The village is unrecognizable. Buildings only stand as walls. The roads are riddled with craters and corpses. Maeve sits in the center of her demolished home with her arms wrapped around her legs, seemingly unfazed by what she sees. The sounds of a begging man breaks the silence, garnering Maeve's attention. She takes a slothful stance and quietly steps over to what used to be part of a stone wall. She leans past the wall to take a glimpse. She sees three men. Two are wearing red uniforms, similar to that of a colored coat. The third is wearing an outfit similar to the men her mother spoke with last night. Shut up already. I have no idea what you're saying. If you don't want to die, you shouldn't have signed up with the resistance in the first place. The man who spoke shoves the resistance member against a wall. The other aims his rifle at his head. Wait! The gun fires. Maeve watches in horror as blood splatters across the brick wall. The now dead man slumps forward, sliding off the brick and onto the dirt road. Blood continues to flow from the man's head, building into a glossy pool. Terrified for her life, fearing that she could be the next victim, she bolts back to the opening she created. Frantically, she shimmies her way under the bed. Two men in red pass by the front of her house, seemingly resuming their patrol duties. Maeve lays huddled in a ball, unsure of what to do or where to go. With seemingly no options left, she starts to cry. A whole day passes. The sound of footsteps and conversation can be heard outside. Maeve flinches in alarm, having been brought back to her senses by overwhelming dread. Hesitantly, she ascends the debris, knocking loose stone and wood fragments. She pauses at the opening to glance at what is happening above. At a distance, two men come into sight, their clothing dusted with grime. They look like the soldiers she saw before. She takes a glimpse at the food they are carrying. Immediately she feels a sensation of hunger and thirst, realizing the scorching sensation of the dry inner lining of her throat. Her stomach groans loudly, whereas her focus upon the men holding the bread deepens. She notices a village survivor sitting across the adjacent street with a loaf of bread in his hand. Looking over to the two soldiers, she waits until they leave the vicinity. She takes a step out from the passage, careful not to make any noise. Maeve looks around the area. It's clear. She dashes to her right, to the other street past the T-shaped intersection. As she approaches the man, she realizes there's an extra loaf lying on a paper sheet beside him, seemingly untouched. Despite being fearful, Maeve decides to progress toward reaching out and asking for only one thing. May I have that? Sorry, kid. They only give 2 a day. You have to make them count. You'll just have to ask for some more tomorrow. He points towards the bread stand out in the distance. Several soldiers stand guard next to it. Maeve looks at him in distress. But he raises his finger as he takes another bite of the loaf. I said no. Maeve bites her lip. A feeling of exasperation boils through her at his denial. It is clear he intends to keep his food. But in spite of this, without warning, Maeve lunges forward and quickly swipes the bread from his side. She begins to bolt down the street, heading as fast as she can towards home. The man beside her screams of a thief as she does so. A soldier rounds the right corner of the intersection, cutting her off. She panics and stumbles face first into the dirt. The soldier kneels down and offers a hand. Hey, give that back to the man. If you're still hungry, I'll gladly give you my share instead. Maeve looks up at the hand and feels nothing but terror. The soldier meant no harm, but she can't understand a language she's never heard. The memory of a soldier who executed the resistance member flashes through Maeve's mind. She sprawls across the ground, backing away in panic. The man continues to approach her, extending both hands out as if to show her he means no harm. Fear has clouded Maeve's judgment, and she screams, not knowing what to do. She feels as if she only has moments to live. Then suddenly, as the man's hand reaches only but a foot in front of her, the necklace her mom gave her shines with a bright purple light. As Maeve grabs the necklace to hide it, the soldier's vision goes dark. With his vision gone, he panics, trying in vain to see as he wipes his head from left to right. What? I can't see! Maeve's vision is perfectly fine. She quickly picks herself up, not hesitating for a moment to get away as fast as she can. Dust is kicked up as Maeve runs. She passes wreckage after wreckage of battered homes, looking right and left to try and find any way of escaping. She crosses into another subdivision, looking back with worry, but the soldier is not there. His vision came back shortly after she left, but she lost him. Eager to rest and bite into her food, Maeve begins to move toward a ruinous alleyway, not too far from her current position. As she enters a narrow gap between the buildings, she glances upward at the ash-stained bricked walls, appearing to be on the verge of collapse, but she's out of breath. If they were to collapse and kill her, so be it. She can move no longer. She fumbles backwards into the eyes of the alley and slides to the bottom. She tilts her head upward with her eyes closed, breathing heavily as she struggles to regain her stamina. She clutches the bread against her chest. Looking back down, she takes bite after bite, consuming half of it, only to pause. She stares at the half-eaten loaf, lost in her thoughts, wondering what to do next. She realizes the only option left for her. It is the one thing she knows she can do, and just like that, a thief is born. 8 years later, she sits in the same position, a young teen with now long brown hair in a new city, cluttered and dusty in an alleyway. She clutches a half-eaten loaf, almost as if she was reflecting upon a memory she despised. She chucks the bread against the adjacent wall. Standing up, she brushes herself off and takes steps towards the exit of a narrow lane. She reaches out to her right towards a pile of boxes, grabbing a brownish head cloak and whisking it over her head. Feeling the necklace she wears clatter in motion, she takes a step outside, converging into a bustling crowd of people who speak a language she does not understand. She is alone and uncertain, knowing nothing is true but only her name. Maeve. Amidst the well-lit street at the break of dusk, filled to the brim with countless people, Maeve walks in a calm manner. Under her cloak she wears a pair of torn brown pants and a grey tattered shirt tied at the waist with a belt made of leather. Ahead of her, a few paces, is a wooden stand, tended by a man dressed in rough, commoner clothes. He is selling apples. Maeve walks in a few feet of the stand without an ounce of hesitation. As she is passing, she swipes an apple nonchalantly. The merchant is unfazed, having not noticed any loss of inventory. Unbothered by her petty thievery, Maeve chomps into the apple. A solid crunch resounds. Over the sounds of people walking and conversing, Maeve's hear a shopkeeper yell, "Get your jewelry here! Handcraft!" Drawn to his shop, Maeve approaches casually toward the widely spaced stand that has a few people browsing the stock. She quickly scans the area and sees at the front desk what seems to be a finely crafted gold necklace lying on the rosewood counter. She looks at the man attending the counter. He is well dressed and currently occupied by the customers. Same as she did for the apple, she grabs the necklace in a single motion, replacing the necklace with a piece of paper that has XX written on it. As she walks away, she can hear the shopkeeper begin crying out for theft. She continues on without worry, taking a bite out of her apple with a smile. The sun continues to fall. She rounds a corner between two buildings and enters an open back alley. Taking one last bite of the apple, she throws it aside. It hits the stone wall with a thud, splattering pieces of leftovers across the crumbling stone. Only a few feet across, the entrance and exit of the lane are significantly more closely spaced than the center of the alley. In the middle of the two gaps, hedging into the building on the right side, a cavernous area between the two stone structures comes into sight. On the right wall, a rusted metallic door with a plate, protruding very slightly outward, comes into view. Maeve walks up to the door and knocks several times in a rhythmic melody. The metal clangs each time with a loud reverberating shatter. I butchered that. A few moments pass, and the plate slowly opens downward into a platter-like desk held up with holding hinges on each side. A man plops his elbow onto the desk, his body shaded under the dim light of the room within. What? He spats, seemingly peeved in his own impatience. He looks down at the girl. Her head hardly comes up to the desk. In a smooth motion, Maeve stands on her toes, pulling her hoodie back and raising the necklace above the counter. Oh, it's you! Haven't seen you in a while. Hold on, let me get the translator. He walks back to the dark wooden shop, disappearing out of view. Maeve clatters the heels of her feet as she waits. Moments later, he comes back with a skinny man in tow. She examines him. He is frail but well dressed in green business clothes. An odd choice, but she doesn't question it. All right, give it here. She tosses the golden necklace onto the counter. Is it worth anything? The muscular man looks over to the translator. The translator responds, telling the man what she said. She wants to know if it's worth anything. The man grunts and takes up the necklace to examine it. Nope, the gold's fake. It's worthless. He throws it back at Maeve. She's caught off guard and fails to catch it, fumbling and dropping it onto the dirt. The other man translates what he said. Maeve bites her lip. She seems indescribably frustrated. The man continues to speak while the translator translates everything in return. Look, I get you're new to the city and all, but you have to learn the difference between something that's worth a lot and something that's not worth anything. Also, that stupid call sign of yours isn't going to mean shit if you keep stealing easy pickings. He reaches under the counter and pulls out a piece of paper. Here, kid. Now this is something that's worth a pretty penny. If you steal this, I promise you, I'll give you good money for it. Maeve takes the paper and looks down at it. It seems to be some sort of advertisement. She can't read it, but from what she can gather from the image on the front, he's likely referring to an expensive-looking trench coat in the middle. You're lucky it was me who came to the door. The other fences don't particularly like you. Mostly because you seem like a bit of a novice, but I can clearly see you have talent. Get that cloak for me, and I'm certain the other guys will take you a bit more seriously. You'll find it at the Crystal Market. It should be in a big building with 4 floors that has a sign, Crystal Fabrics Manufacturing. Same thing it says on the paper. He looks towards the translator. Hey, go get a map. After everything is translated, the frail man grabs a map and plants it on the table. He then writes the instructions the fencer continues to give. You'll find it here. It's in the wealthier side of town. There's a clinic there. It has a big green plus. It's at the corner road between the gallery and the streets toward the shop. It has a great vantage point. I would start there. Once you're there, scan the place out and find an escape route. Oh, and the place has guards on night duty, so don't bother trying to wait until they close. Try to wait for an opportunity. That's really all the advice I can give. I expect big things from you, kid. You got great talent for a kid your age. What are you, like 12? 13 years old? You have a lot of potential to grow. Maeve looked towards the translator and wait. He explains. She answers his question. Actually, I'm 14. The translator turns to the muscular man. She says she's 14. That difference doesn't really matter. Just get the cloak and knock on the door when you're in the clear. We'll work things out from there. Good luck, kid. Good luck. The door begins to retract. Gears wrench and spring into action as the door folds shut. Maeve stands there, not moving. The moment the door finally closes, she throws the necklace onto the ground in a fit of fury. Fuck! She marches off to the opposing exit, looking intensely at the map. Worthless? I'll show you who's worthless. As the sun slowly drifts beyond the horizon, she finds herself wandering around a near-empty shopping district lined with various stones and stands. Unperturbed by how late it is, Maeve, wearing her hood, walks restlessly, holding loosely onto the map as she whips her head up and down, trying her best to follow the directions. She notices that most of the shops have begun closing for the night. The shoppers as well have likely head home, which explains the lack of people. It should be to the right of here. Maeve makes a right turn, moving into an even further depopulated road. The area seems to have turned residential. Candles and lanterns now light the windows. As she approaches the end of the street, she looks up. Hanging from a building is a sign marked with a green plus. Under it is wood carved calligraphy. It spells out East Woods Medical Clinic, with a hanging wooded sign just under it stating, offering free services. Raising an eyebrow, she turns her head to a window to the right of her. She decides to approach it cautiously. Putting one foot in front of the other, she sets a hand up to the slightly scorched glass. Through it, she sees a young-looking man reading a leather-bound book. His hair sits on the right side of his chest, long, thick, brown, and bound at the end with a blue hairband. Sitting back in a brown chair in what seems to be a dining room, he seems fully immersed into the words on his paper. Backing away from the glass, she scans the building. Looking from corner to corner, she searches for a way onto the roof. Maeve squints her eyes as the dark silhouette of the soffit is hardly distinguishable from the darkened sky. She decides to look somewhere else. It's too risky to try and climb something she can barely see. To the left of her, an open walkway connecting from the front pavement leads around the exterior of the building. She decides to follow it, hoping to find a safer way onto the roof. As she rounds the corner, she finds herself in the backyard of the clinic. It's wide open with long, freshly trimmed grass covering the entirety of the lot, with a single oak tree planted in the center of the yard. The leaves of the tree rustle in the wind as a faint wisp of the cut greenery still linger, tingling her nose as she breathes. Looking up towards the clinic, she becomes confused as to why the building has inexplicably gained a story of height. She looks back up towards where she came and realizes that the walkway was on an incline, meaning she was now on the basement level. She spins around and raises her head to the first floor of the building as a covered porch wooden pillars reinforce the lip of the roof, with a metal railing spans between each pillar. A spiral staircase extends outward from the railing on the left and the end of the porch. Her attention is then brought to a massive trellis. It seems fairly new, as if it was installed only recently. As she approaches it, she takes a grip of the white threaded wood. The rough yet smooth texture of paint tingles her hand. Lifting one foot, she plants it between one of the diamond-shaped holes, pulling and rocking back to test its strength. Slowly, she climbs steadily, making her way to the top at a decent pace. Even though her size is small and weighs next to nothing, the wooden structure rings out in agony. The nails play Russian roulette, bargaining whether or not they can take the pain. Maeve doesn't wait around to find out. She quickly scurries up the foundation and reaches the rooftop as if she was being timed. Her feet smash down onto the clay tiles, making a loud clash under her weight. Inside, a loud clatter can be heard traveling across the top of the building. The young doctor, who still sits in his chair, looks up toward the ceiling. He raises an eyebrow, unsure of what it was. He closes his book and traverses up the stairs. Maeve now sits on the corner edge of the clinic, just above the front door, looking out towards the city. Several blocks lay in clear view. Since the clinic was built up higher on an incline than the other houses, it overlooks most of the city. She spots her target, a large, four-story building less than half a mile away. It's the tallest building in the area, and seems to be near the Noble shopping district. It makes sense that high-end items would be near high-end customers. Suddenly, without warning, the window that sits to her right, not 2 feet from her, springs open. The young-looking doctor with the blue hairband from earlier leans out with a lit candle in hand. He looks at the small cloaked figure, expressing visible confusion. "Why are you on my roof?" Maeve bolts backward, shielding her face. She whips out her knife and takes a defensive stance. The doctor statistically reaches out for the window. Okay, I'm sorry." He slams the window shut. Obviously, the figure doesn't want to be bothered at the moment. He decides that if they wish to stand on his roof, so be it. Better than being stabbed. After he slams the window, Maeve bolts off to the building that is in the direction of the manufacturing building. She jumps onto the adjacent roof and gets behind a chimney. She looks back towards the window, gripping her knife. After a few seconds pass, she lowers her guard. She comes to the conclusion that the man doesn't want any trouble and will likely leave her alone. The young man, still at the window, places his hand on his hips. Yeesh. Having calmed down, Maeve sets off toward her target, the Fabrics Manufacturing Center. Hopping from building to building, Maeve arrives on top of a two-story house made of wood and stone, opposite to the manufacturing center. Looking down, there are street lanterns illuminating a brick sidewalk that is very lightly caked with dust. After glancing at the street below for a moment, Maeve turns her attention towards the object of interest, the Crystal Fabric Store. An intensely well-designed structure, it has 4 stories with brilliant white paint slapped onto reinforced brick walls ladled with redwood trim. Maeve cases each floor as best as she can from her current location. Lanterns light the interior, alluding to the possibility that there are people on site. Maeve, having gathered some intel, switches her focus to the roughly drawn map given to her by the translator. She grabs the crystal dangling from her necklace, placing it between her index finger and thumb. It begins to radiate a purple glow, lighting the paper up in a faint tint. On the map, a rough sketch of the building with an arrow, hastily scribbled onto the paper, points toward what looks to be badly drawn jacket located on the floor. Settling the paper back into her pocket, she settles her necklace back under her shirt. Maeve looks up at the marked location, noting that the building stands a full story taller than all the others. She notices an open fenced balcony connecting to the 4th floor, just behind the left corner of the building. The inner light irradiates the wave-like curves of the white painted railings. That's her way in. She looks into a building to the right. She sees a shopping canopy linking across to the other side, not 2 houses down. Maeve nods her head and hops over the hanging fabric. As she crosses over, she feels the weaved cloth stretch and curl at the corners. Her feet swivel back and forth as she manages to balance. Maeve approaches the other side. The roof of the building she settles herself on is flat and stone. The building next to the fabric center is the same. It should make it easy to maneuver onto the balcony. Hopping over to the next building, Maeve looks across the illuminated windows. Her eyes cross something she believes to be her target. Inside a large glass casing in a dark, red-looking jacket with 2 purple gems settled on each other in each collar lapel. She didn't question it until now, but she begins to ramble in her head about the inconsistencies of the cloak's description. Why do they keep calling it a cloak when it resembles more of a trench coat with no buttons? She shrugs off the thought, coming to the conclusion that it must be one of those things nobles do that make no sense. She moves on and observes further. She spots 2 men inside. One is a guard wearing the usual red cloth with iron plating, and the other seems to be a noble. His attire makes him look more like 200-pound lion cloth than an actual human being, but she was never born into nobility, so maybe lion cloths are big with the women around here or something. Ignoring them, she looks over to a pipeline leading up to the roof of the building, which seems to be her only option. Taking a massive leap between the 2 buildings, she grips onto the pipe with a clatter. This word again. The reverberating noise echoes around her, a noise far louder than she would have liked. She doesn't move. The noble inside spins around towards one of the 2 closed windows. Maeve hangs from the pipeline, motionless, just to his right below the blinds. She gazes up at the lit glass not 2 feet away from her, hearing the loud, muffled voice of the men. She tries to listen to find an opportunity to advance, but she's unable to make out what they're saying. What in the bloody hell was that? The guard walks up to the window. He peers out through the glass, but is unable to see anything between the lit room and the darkened, cold street. Probably just a bat. It happens often. The poor things can't tell the difference between an opening and a glass door. The noble raises an eyebrow, unconvinced. That did not sound like a bat hitting glass. Maeve still hangs onto the pipe, the burning sensation in her arms to build as she struggles to keep her footing on what little nicks and crannies lay bare on the steel tube. I hear all sorts of noises like that during the night. Since all the shops have closed up, every sound outside is amplified from, well, the lack of sound. It was most likely one of those pipe lungs compressing from the temperature change. They do that. The noble looked more confused than ever, and his curiosity is in need of explanation. Oh, well, that part is not translated. P- Pardon? Comprelong compressing? Oh, well, I used to be an engineer. Steel expands and compresses depending on the temperature. One of the lugs that hold the pipeline outside, probably. The noble instantly loses interest, cutting him off. You know what? Never mind. I have to get going. It's fairly late. I have an appointment tomorrow. I'll lock the front door and leave the last of the packing to you. I'll leave the keys in the basement on your chair so you can check on the storage room once you finish up here. I'll see it done, sir. Also, I don't care for expanding lugs or for whatever nonsense you spoke of. From today on, I want you to check up on any sound you hear. Do you understand? Any sounds. Yes, sir, I'll see it done. The noble nods his head, satisfied with the answer. Good. He turns around, fixing his collar as he makes his way over to the exiting door. As he walks through, he tosses a pair of keys onto the red chair to the left of him. He slams the door. The wooden room vibrates in response. Maeve hears this, and and feeling her grip weakening, she can't wait any longer. She quickly climbs up to the roof as quietly as she can. The pipe screeches out as she passes the window. The guard hears it, turning his head to the source. He stares at the glass, not shortly after waving a disregarding hand. It's just the lugs. Maeve settles herself on the top of the flat roof and dusts herself off. She walks over to the lip of the building just above the balcony. The balcony is beautifully decorated. Red fabric weaves from each custom forged metal post, while lush potted greenery hangs from each side of the white painted double doors. It stands just above the 3-story building in front of it, and every 3-story building beyond that. Observing the fine work of an architect, she feels a cold chill on her exposed hands. Rain begins to lightly fall, causing the stone and wood of the buildings around her to glisten. She sees someone running down the street to the right of her. It is a noble, holding a large brown book above his white, braided hair, seemingly caring more for his head than whatever his book had in possession. The rain doesn't particularly bother her, it never has. She finds it more soothing than annoying, but perhaps that's just because, like her, you only remember it exists when it's there. As Maeve waits through the rain, the lights out inside dwindle out. Her attention comes back into focus. She stands up, lowering herself onto the balcony to take a glimpse inside. Putting her hand up to the glass of one of the double doors, she sees several displays filled with expensive-looking jewelry and clothing. Her eyes come upon the cloak. Now the guard has left the room. It is time for her to make her move. Backing away with about a foot from the door, she reaches into her pocket and takes out what appears to be a metal lockpick. As she sets her right hand on the doorknob, she tests to see if it's locked. Unexpectedly, it opens. She stands there slightly surprised, looking quickly at the lockpick. She shrugs and shoves it back into her pocket, not questioning the convenience. Taking one quiet step after another, she enters the room. The rain splatters in the background from the remaining open door. Not wasting any time, she walks around the glass casing containing the long red cloak. However, as she approaches the lock, she sees a pair of keys laying on top of a chair next to the interior door. She decides to grab them and use them on the lock, thinking they may be the keys to the display case. Smiling, she turns around and orientates herself back towards the cloak. Her eyes light up as she approaches it, adrenaline coursing through her. Without hesitation, she tries all 3 keys individually, but none of them work. She scowls in annoyance and discards them onto the floor. Taking out her lockpick, she wiggles it into place and jams it open, grabbing the cloak and folding it into her arms. She is surprised by how heavy it is. Maybe a good 10-12 pounds? No doubt a huge portion of that way is the huge jewel sewn into the back. It is the same diamond-like shape she sees the magistrate and the paladins use on a lot of their military wear. She wonders what is the meaning behind this. She shrugs. It doesn't really matter to her, as long as it pays. Reaching into her pocket, she takes out a knife and carves her calling card of 2 X's into the bottom flooring of the case, creating a harsh, scratching sound. As she finishes, she hears the interior door open and looks to the right. The guard comes into the dark room with a lantern. "Who are you?" They both freeze in place. The guard looks down at the keys lying on the wooden floor not a few feet in front of him. Then he looks up at the small cloaked figure who was holding the cloak. Thief! The guard strikes an alarm above the chair. It begins to blare loudly into the room and into the street. Every door and window around her slams shut and locks with a wooden plate in unison. Maeve panics and the adrenaline that was already coursing through her skyrockets. Realizing she is stuck in the room with the guard, she drops a cloak and runs at him. The guard stands on the defensive, waiting to deflect the knife. As she rapidly approaches him, he watches the thief pull a necklace out from under her shirt. A bright light begins to shine intensely from the object, and almost as quickly as it came, the light vanishes. However, not only did the light from the necklace vanish, but all light that was around him. The guard was blind. Where did you? She plunges the knife into his throat, killing him instantly. His subconscious reflex gargles for air as he hits the ground with a thud. Oh my god, I love this. She hears the sound of men yelling and screaming outside as the alarm blares over her ears. Grabbing the cloak, she bolts towards the balcony doors and pushes on both of them. They're locked tight. She spins around to try and find another exit. Looking towards the windows, she sees each one of them gridlocked by metal blinds. The sound on the first floor being barred open shatters Maeve's composure. Realizing she has no time left, she reels herself back and charges at the balcony doors. Her small body bounces off, not even phasing it. She stares at the locked double doors. Realizing she has nowhere to go, panic begins to settle in. They're going to see the dead guard. They'll kill her. She didn't want to kill him, but she had to, right? He was going to kill her if she didn't protect herself. She had to kill him to survive. What was that? Was what she did wrong? She gasps for air as if she cannot breathe. Clutching onto the cloak as hard as she can, she shuts her eyes and collapses onto the floor. With a scream, suddenly, as her hand touches one of the jewels on the front cloak, she feels herself shoot forward with intense speed and smash into the balcony doors with her right shoulder. Maeve doesn't exactly know what happened, but she's in the air now. It happened in almost a blink of an eye. One moment she was on the floor in front of a pair of locked doors, not moments from being shot to death. And the next she's 15 feet in the air above a 3-story building. Confused as ever, as she hits the flat roof with a roll, she hears doors bust open behind her. Several guards sweep the room Maeve was just in. They look towards the balcony doors, which have been ripped open with an incredible force. As they approach the balcony, they see a brown-cloaked figure running across the rooftops with a red cloak in hand. There he is! On the rooftops! Maeve continues to jump from building to building. The hood of her brown cloak flies back and her long hair wisps around in the falling rain. She hears a man yell from the roof in the distance. Fire! The guards fire their weapons. Maeve crosses over to another building as red bolts of mana fly past, missing her only by an inch. As she approaches the end of the next building, she isn't as lucky. A keen shot strikes through her lower right lung, causing her to slip. Not in the rain before the jump. Slip in the rain before the jump. She tries to reorientate herself with her right arm, but it doesn't move. She falls, plummeting from a 3-story rooftop. She hits a large connecting pipe between the two buildings on a third of the way down. She smacks it with a loud clang and bounces off, traveling the rest of the distance. She hits the ground with a snap of her left leg. She cries out in agony, rolling in the alley deep in mud. She tries to cover her mouth with her right arm, and again, it won't respond. She covers her mouth with her left. Her eyes are wide open, filled with agonizing pain. Okay, I'm sad. He's gonna get hurt. She attempts to stand up. She can't remain here. The guards who shot her undoubtedly know where she fell. She has to move quickly before they inform anyone else of her position. The moment she gets on her feet, she realizes her left leg is broken, coming to the conclusion that her right arm may be broken somewhere as well, likely from slamming into the balcony doors. Picking up the cloak, now covered in mud, she staggers out onto the street, the rain pouring down in droves. She's bleeding profusely. If it wasn't for the rain, the guards could easily track her blood trail. Need to hide. Need to hide. She thinks of every possible place where she can go, and in truth, there isn't anywhere for her to go. With the injuries that she currently has, there is no way she's going to live through the night, let alone for a week or a month. Then it hits her. If she's going to live, Then she has to get to that clinic and threaten the doctor into helping her. It's the only option she has left. After a good 10 minutes of traversing the streets in agonizing pain, she begins to recognize the area. Putting all her strength into each stride, she manages to get within a few meters of the clinic. The lights in the building are still on. As she steps up to the door, she runs a plan through her head. She'll tell the doctor that if he doesn't help her, she'll break out of prison before her execution and kill him. Then her heart drops like a stone. She hears guards coming a few corners down. She begins banging on the door, attempting to scream out for someone to answer. However, what comes out of her voice is only that of a weak plea. Unexpectedly, just like the balcony door, it opens. There the door stands, the same young man from before, blue hair tie and all. She raises her knife, still clutching onto the cloak. Blood pours from the red, gem-threaded fabric. The young doctor puts his hand in the air and slowly backs away into the house. Maeve follows him inside, maintaining a consistent yet threatening stance. She opens her mouth to speak to him, to help her, to threaten him, to demand anything that will keep her alive, but she is cut short. Before she could do anything, before she could save herself, everything goes dark, and her consciousness fades to nothing. If she dies in the first chapter, I'm gonna be livid. The young man just stands there with his hands still in the air, bewildered by what had just happened. He looks down at the young girl, now unconscious from what he believes to be blood loss. She looks incredibly young, 13 to 15 maybe? Her long brown hair is in tatters, almost if it hadn't been washed in years. He looks down at the red cloak she dropped suddenly to the right of her. No, red cloak she dropped to the right of her. He recognizes it from a poster and knows just how much it's worth. Suddenly, he hears guards sprinting down the road near his house, yelling for the search of a cloaked thief. Sorry, I read things wrong. I'm dyslexic. He begins to connect the dots and comes to a moral decision. Grabbing the blood-soaked cloak, he runs into the rain and begins yelling for the guards. The guards come around the corner of the clinic. The rain splatters against their metal armor. "Doctor, did you see a thief come by here?" The doctor nods his head. "I think so. I saw someone in a dark cloak fumble and drop this while I was at my window. I saw him run off that way." "Thank you, doctor. This is the item they stole. We appreciate the help. This way, men." One of the other guards approaches him and asks for the return of the stolen item. "I'll take this off your hands." The doctor kindly hands off the cloak with one last nod. "Please do." The guard, now finished with his work, runs off with his men, cloak in hand. The doctor stands there until they're out of sight. Turning around, he runs back inside with a single goal in mind. Maeve hears the faint chimes of a beautiful melody. As she opens her eyes, she is grated into a wooden ceiling. Thank God she's not dead. She's confused at first, not exactly sure why or how she got here. The last thing she remembers is threatening that young man. When she turns her head to her left, the first thing she sees is a blue hairband. Glad to see someone's finally awake. Maeve looks toward where the chimes are coming from. She sees a little wooden music box on the nightstand, chiming away a pretty melody. He sets down his book and leans over his rocking chair, turning the music off, and looking back towards her with a smile. She's been met with the happy expression by the man she just threatened to kill. This makes no sense to her. How long has she been here? Been there. She wants answers. She needs them. She tries to speak, but her mouth refuses to cooperate. What, She attempts to sit up almost immediately. The doctor stands up and encourages her to lay still. Careful. You're a little weak right now. You're in the recovery room upstairs. I don't get many patients now, so no one else is here besides you and me. They're looking for a man with long brown hair. It took some measures to ensure you wouldn't be recognized, so don't worry about being found out. It's best if you stay where you are. You don't want to move your leg too much. It's only been 2 days. Maeve doesn't understand a word he's saying. She looks down at her arm that now lays in a sling. She also notices her braced leg. She begins to feel vulnerable. Don't worry. Your arm will heal. It was only dislocated. And for the gunshot wound, I managed to close it up and stop the internal bleeding. Your leg was splintered in several directions, and I did the best I could with mana crystals I had and managed to set it back into place. It should heal just fine, and you should be able to put some weight on it, but since my skill doesn't affect bone marrow, it may take some time. May I know your name? The only word Maeve understands is name, and she's not comfortable enough to give or take any sort. She feels like she has nowhere to go, and her life is in the hands of someone she can't trust. She needs answers fast. Once again, she attempts to speak, but her voice comes off weak. I, I don't. Yes? Slowly, her voice begins to pick up. I don't understand. I don't speak English. The doctor's eyes light up from the sudden realization. He puts his hand on his chest. Oh, my apologies. I hadn't anticipated you to be French. I don't speak French, so this may make this difficult. Hold on a minute. Setting down the book on the nightstand to his right, he stands up and walks over to the bookshelf a few feet away. Maeves hear him muttering to himself. Plucking a book off the second to top shelf, he waltzed back over to the rocking chair and plops back down in his seat. Taking a pen and paper in hand, he readies himself as best he can as he flips through the pages. Let's see. Spanish, German. Okay, here we go. Okay, so his eyes flash from page to page, writing a single word onto the paper. He then reads it. Name? Maeve was stunned. He pronounced it so badly and so incorrectly she was impressed. Regardless, she has no plan on giving him any name, so she decides to remain silent. Are you not willing to tell me your name? Oh, right. He quickly flips through the pages once more, scribbling down each individual word without any structure, only to read what could only be described as intellectual gibberish. Won't tell name? His delivery was so bad, she was about to burst out laughing. The only thing that stopped her was the incredible, intense pain as a result. She shakes her head as a reply. The doctor sighs. That's understandable. You're likely hungry, so let me get you some food. He translates another two words, getting food. But before I go, he points to himself. Ethan. My name is Ethan. If you need anything, ring the bell. He points a finger at the bell and then holds up his other hand to indicate that she needs to wait. As he walks out, he closes the door, leaving her alone to her thoughts. She remains conflicted, confused as to what his reasons are for helping her. There has to be something he's going to gain from this. He's going to do something to her, but what is that something? Ethan energetically burst through the door with a massive silver platter in hand. Look what I got you! Bread with tea and noodles warmed in chicken broth. As Ethan lowers himself next to Maeve, he places the platter on the corner of the bed. She attempts to sit up, but Ethan pushes her back down before she can progress any further. He waves his finger side to side. No, no, no. Cupping his hand, he places it under her head, lifting it off the pillow. Following in one swift motion, he folds the pillow in half and lowers her softly back onto the white feathered case. Taking the silver tray in hand, he settles it next to just the lip settles it next to her just on the lip of the soft mattress. Maeve doesn't try to show it, but she can feel her mouth water. She is starving and doesn't care if it's poisonous or not. She needs to eat. She takes a spoon of broth and blows into it, lowering it in front of her mouth. Open. Maeve understands the gesture and complies, not really having any other option. Opening her mouth, he settles the spoon near the roof of her tongue. It's been a while since she has had something warm and refreshing like this. There you go. Ethan continues to feed her, cutting the bread into small slices and stuffing her face. As the last of the bread is consumed from the plate, she spots the knife unattended on the platter. This is her opportunity. She doesn't know what he's planning, and she needs something to defend herself with. Slowly, she reaches out with her left hand while Ethan is too busy to notice. As she grabs the lip of the knife, she twists in the wrong direction, putting pressure on her left leg. Maeve quenches as she jolts back from the sudden spike in pain. Then a loud clatter strikes the floor. The knife that was in her hand slips from her hold and now lay bare among the wooden flooring, breadcrumbs still gripped to the edges of the blade. Huh? Ethan looks down at the knife and quickly realizes what just happened. He looks up at her and stares into her eyes. Maeve's expression has contorted into blistering fear. Her eyes are wide, and adrenaline shoots through her body, just like before. She wonders, am I going to die? Ethan reaches down for the knife. Maeve shuts her eyes, bracing for the worst. She feels something placed into the palm of her hand. She opens her eyes. She's greeted by not that of anger or betrayal, but a smile. The knife isn't placed near her throat or gut, but in her hand. Slowly, with only that of a nod, Ethan raises from his chair and walks out of the room without a change in expression. After looking back with a smile, he blows out a candle and shuts the door behind him. He did not say a word. He did not say a thing, but to Maeve, it feels like he spoke a million. She raises the knife above her head, staring into a blurry reflection of a broken girl. But it's not a girl with a broken spirit. It's her beliefs that have been broken, and she is left with only a stream of tears. For the first time in forever, she didn't feel alone. As the night rolls past, Ethan quietly opens the door into Maeve's room. The morning daylight trickles through the shut blinds. Normally, he would wake a patient at this time to check their vitals and get to know them a bit better, to make them feel comfortable and safe. But he thinks this time it is best to let the girl rest a bit longer. She probably has more concerns on her mind right now than this hospitality. As she did, If she did, that knife wouldn't be laying on the nightstand unattended, but in her hand. Quietly shutting the door, he gives respect for her privacy with a final, wishful good night. And that is the end of chapter 1. Wow, a lot just happened in chapter 1. Like, oh my goodness, so much happened. Like, Wake told me that I would be hooked on chapter 4. This is insane. Like, it's the first chapter, and I'm already so indulged into this. Like, I can't even. Wow. Wow. So overall, this is really, really good. But I'm, like, not sure yet why people are saying it's, like, the best thing they've ever read. It's really good, but, like, I've heard that it builds over each chapter. So we'll just have to wait and see how that goes. Alright, on to chapter 2.